Sam here from the League One Lowdown preview show. Don't worry, we'll be getting to the amazing tones of Jamie and Seb in a moment, but I'm just asking for a bit of a plea. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button on our channel, only 15% of you that watch us are subscribed to the channel. So if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, that is greatly appreciated by all four of us, and you'll never miss an upload, especially as we head through a busy January period. We've got transfers, we've got previews, we've got reviews, and we've got our big end of season review where we're having a giveaway at the end of the season. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to the first League One Lowdown review episode of 2025. I apologise. I'm going to get my apologies out straight away for my awful sounding voice. I picked up a sore throat, some sort of cold over Christmas. So I apologise for that, but we're going to soldier through. I'm Jamie Johnson and alongside me is Seb Jones. As always, Seb, Happy New Year and how are you?
Happy New Year to you as well. Well, I seem to be sounding a bit better than you are. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, good. Nice and refreshed after a good Christmas break. Seems to have flown by a little bit, but yeah, we're here, ready to go again, and hopefully we can get 2025 off to a good start.
Exactly. It's definitely flown by. I mean, it just sort of suddenly, like, you clicked your fingers and it was Christmas, and then again and it was New Year, and then now we're back into the grind, if you like. But a lots to talk about from the weekend. We didn't do our usual cold open that we usually do on these review podcasts, but it was the first weekend of the new year, and Bolton won late on. Lincoln, they still can't score, and Peterborough continue to struggle. They're sort of the main themes we're going to talk about, but we've picked 6 games out, as per usual, that we're going to go through in detail. And Seb's going to do a lot of the talking today, so you don't have to hear whatever gravel this sounds like on the audio format. So we're going to start with Bolton, as I mentioned there in the introduction, and their 2-1 win at Exeter City. It was late goals from Aaron Collins and Aaron Morley. Seb, probably it looks better than it is, but they've won, and that's the main thing. And you probably expect it to be a little bit easier, but Bolton have won away from home, and it's always a nice way to do it late on.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It's proper late show stuff from Bolton in terms of getting their result. You know, both goals coming in the 88th and the 90 plus first minute, Collins and Morley respectively. So proper late show stuff, really. And I guess probably something that Bolton have been wanting for a while, some sort of, I don't know, just promising result. It seems to be lack of consistency the past few weeks. You know, it's not really been all that favourable in terms of a Bolton point of view. You know, in terms of league table, currently sitting 10th. But actually, if you look at the results before that, you know, yes, to beat Exeter, but before that loss to Mansfield, it ended 2024 with victory. But then losing to Barnsley and losing to Barnsley at Wigan and a draw to Wycombe in there as well. It's not looking all that good really for Bolton, and I guess sort of. It's a morale booster, don't get me wrong, you know, in terms of whenever your side win late, it's got to feel good. But I don't know if it perhaps is papering over some of the cracks that are sort of showing at Bolton. So, yes, it's a good performance. Yes, you know, as I mentioned, whenever your side grab a last-minute winner, when they score 2 goals late, it's always a good feeling. But, yeah, I do think it slightly papers over the cracks in terms of what's going on at Bolton at the minute.
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, they're up to 10th now in the table, but they've been inconsistent, as you mentioned there, Seb. I know they beat Lincoln 3-0 in the last game of 2024, but that probably, I mean, there's no probably, that game was changed on the red card at half-time for Ethan Overhan. And before that, what I hear from people that were there is that it wasn't a Bolton battering like it obviously came in the end. So they've not, even in their victories, they haven't been stellar. But this one, they started off well, reading off the stats before going behind after the break, and they've salvaged it late on, as we've mentioned. And that, I think, is the key. You mentioned morale booster, said that they can use this and try and springboard onto a hot streak of form.
Oh, for sure, yeah. You've got to have something like this, like a last minute winner to sort of use that as a bit of momentum going forward. And Bolton have to do that. We've spoken many times on this podcast about the pressure that Ian Evatt is facing. That put it shortly, they just haven't been good enough so far this season. And I mentioned that they are sitting a lowly 10th position, which for Bolton standards is just unacceptable, really. So they need something to sort of just spur them on a little bit, just to get a couple of good results together, get them pushing back up the league table, and maybe this was the one, the last minute win against Exeter. I don't know. Maybe they'll just go back to being inconsistent, but we can only hope in terms of if they do become more inconsistent, then the pressure is just going to grow and grow and grow on Ian Evatt. So they'll certainly hope it can be a springboard. Whether it is or not, in my opinion, I'm not sure.
It's one of those wait and sees, isn't it? They've got Rotherham next in the early kickoff on Saturday the 11th, and then an FA trophy. That's where I was at the weekend. An EF trophy game against Lincoln, which I will be at as well. Tuesday.
Just a word for Exeter as well. I almost feel a little bit unlucky for them, really, because they're a little bit like Bolton. Their results have been a bit inconsistent as well, and they take the lead just 10 minutes after half time. So a good time to score, really. Sort of hit them quick in terms of the second 45, but sort of weren't able to hang on. And I think they're on a bit of a lower spell at the minute, but I don't think it's massively concerning. In terms of their league position as such.
Where they just kept keeping clean sheets. September, October, that's disappeared, hasn't it? They seem to be
for sure.
They can keep goals out, but nowhere near. I mean, they were on such an unbelievable run, and it was always going to end eventually. But they've been quite poor since then.
Yeah, and not to bring out this stat so early, but they've not yet won in 2025. Yeah, but even before that, they ended December with a 4-4 draw to Crawley. Yes, they beat Bristol Rovers, but they conceded, and that one finished 3-1. They beat Burton Albion, that finished 2-1. So you're right, the sort of the knack of keeping clean sheets just seems to have gone, and ultimately that's the baseline for a solid defence and for a solid. A solid team, really. And just before we move on as well, I think Exeter have offered their support to Josh McGuinness after he received racial abuse from the Bolton fans. So the game was actually briefly stopped as well as the striker spoke to the referee. So just sort of that's done the rounds.
It's always worth mentioning.
Always worth mentioning. Yeah, it's done the rounds. So the sort of the protocol was done, and sort of Exeter have since come out and supported their striker in that.
Yeah, I'm glad you swung us back to Exeter there, because obviously Bolton are the focus, and you get these games where even if the team is losing, the bigger team, if you like, or the team where the more focus is on, that becomes the story. But Exeter, they have their own troubles at the minute that they'll be helping to rectify. We'll move along then to two teams in a little bit of trouble, respectively. Cambridge United against Bristol Rovers. It was a 1-0 win for the away side and a first win for the new manager, which is always an important one. And to do it away from home against a team challenging in those same area of the table, trying to stay in the division, is a really positive one. There's 6 without a win before it, and only just above the drop zone. But for me, this reads like a really, really important and seminal 3 points for Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, for sure. I think the goal came courtesy of Luke Thomas, and we all know his quality eye, particularly. He was at Barnsley for a good spell, and he done really well at the club. He just I don't think he started as many games as he was like to. So he moved on, went to Bristol Rovers, had a bit of a row really when Joey Barton was in charge. So to the point where Joey Barton actually came out and called out Luke Thomas.
It's not like Joey Barton, is
specifically. I know, not at all. Yeah, called out Luke Thomas specifically for not being good enough, and you can only imagine sort of what that does to players' performance and the players' mental health as well. And so to come back at that same club. And to get such a big goal, in a big game, as you said, against sort of a relegation counterpart, I think that's massive for Luke Thomas. And yeah, I think it's good to see him on the score sheet. It's good to see the new manager get his first win. it's not so good to see Cambridge struggle, but ultimately it's going to be a long, hard season for them. The league table doesn't look good for them, and this performance sort of shows why, and as performances so far in the season as well, they've just struggled, and ultimately for Bristol Rovers, it's two players of quality stepping up. It was Scott Sinclair's deep cross, and then Luke Thomas got the end of it. So that is two wingers that are good quality at this level, and they're both stepping up to showing the levels of quality that we know they can do. And ultimately, Cambridge have just been done by one piece of quality, and yeah, it's got Bristol Rovers to 3 points. It's got their head coach the first win. And hopefully, as you said, they can sort of use this as a bit of a springboarder to sort of just push away a little bit further. You said they're in 20th. They're actually a 5-point gap already between them and the relegation places. But it wouldn't hurt to sort of extend that lead even further to shoot up the league table as best they can. But yeah, they've already got that gap and already got that distance from the bottom four. But to extend that, I don't think it would hurt anyone at all.
Well, definitely that. And they're level on points with Peterborough, we'll talk about in the second half. As we mentioned, the first win for Inigo Corraldon, and I hope I haven't butchered pronunciation there.
You're braver than me. I avoided that.
Yeah. I thought we have to. So one of us had to go. I was hoping you was going to bite the bullet on that one. But yeah, the Brighton under-21s head coach before he took over at Bristol Rovers just after Christmas. Actually, there used to be a right back in his playing days, the Spaniard. But he's got his first win, and it's always really important to just get that first win on the board, and not just for him, but for Bristol Rovers overall, because they were on that really poor run, as I mentioned. Leading up to that, their goalkeeper Josh Griffiths got man of the match, at least on FootMob. He faced 17 shots, 6 on target, whereas Bristol Rovers with 7 and 2. It showed that perhaps Cambridge, the more creative side, the side pushing more, the side creating more, definitely. But they haven't done anything with it, and they are firmly in the relegation zone. 5 losses in a row, and they've only scored twice in that spell. And when you see a team that has only scored 2 in 5 games, you think, oh, well, they're not creating chances. Well, it looks like they are. XG of 1.59. They're creating chances. They're just not putting them in the back of the net set.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a concern, really. I guess up top for Cambridge was Daniel Lunderloo and Elias Kachunga, both sort of players that we know, can score. Perhaps not the most consistent. Kachunga's got 5 this season, and Lunderloo's got 4, which is joint with Lavery for the club. But yeah, not you want probably a bit more consistency, and you want higher levels of goal scoring if you are going to avoid the drop. And ultimately, yes, it's all good creating these chances, but you have to get the ball in the back of the net, and that's something that Cambridge just aren't doing. And it's got to be a concern. It's got to be a target for the January window in terms of strengthening at the top end of the field for Gary Monk's side. So yeah, they've got to do better, really. There's no other way of putting it. They've got to do better up top. Yes, they've got 2 solid options up top, but they could do better for sure. But it's whether sort of anyone better would want to come to a side currently facing a relegation battle. But yeah,
well you bring me on perfectly to the question I was going to ask you. I mean, we're going to try and weave a bit of transfer talk, predictions, thoughts, I guess, as we go through. And I mean, if Bristol Rovers would have lost this game, you'd switch the names around. But the question I'm going to ask you is, what do Cambridge need to do in January? I mean, you mentioned it there, and it feels to me like it's probably a striker. Obviously, that's the easy fix. Everyone needs a striker. Yeah. It's the fact that there's not many of them out there. I mean, Kachunga, you mentioned the top goal scorer in the league with 5. But it's less than the goal of the game for the team overall. And they have the worst goal difference in the league. And the other side to it, as much as they're not scoring enough and you'd think, well, they need a striker, only Shrewsbury have conceded more goals than Cambridge in the league this season. So problems at both ends. Where do you think the January recruitment should go for Gary Monk?
Well, I mentioned before, I think you're right in terms of they need to strengthen at both ends of the pitch. But for me, I think the priority is up top. Yes, it's good keeping clean sheets, but actually, if you don't score, you've got no ways of winning games. So for me, they've got to bring in a central striking option. We've already said they've got Kachunga and they've got Lunderloo. both have scored this season, but probably not scored enough to help keep Cambridge afloat. And yes, it's not solely on them, but you've got to step up when you're at a club like Cambridge that are in a position like they are. Your strikers have got to step up, and they just haven't so far this season. So an attacking option is probably definitely a priority for me in terms of Cambridge.
I agree for them. I think that is the main target, but not the only one.
Well, of course,
and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more as we go through January. Any movements as we go along will be across, as will Sam and Callum on the preview podcast. I'm sure they have slightly more listenable voices than mine at the minute. It feels like it's just getting worse through this podcast. But we're on to our third game, the last one of this first half, and it's Stockport County 1, Mansfield Town 2. Before we go into the game, to keep it on the transfer theme, you know the question I'm going to ask you, don't you, Seb?
I do. It's coming.
Louis Barry obviously leaving, being recalled by Aston Villa, being sent to the Championship, it seems. I asked you not how they replace his goals, but how do they replace everything Louis Barry brought? Because he was, as much as he was a machine in front of goal, he brought so much more than just the goal scoring. And how do you go about replacing a player like that?
Well, let's just sort of put it in terms of stats. Ultimately, before he left, Louis Barry was the top goal scorer in the league. 15 goals, 2 assists. It's going to take some effort to replace him, really, but not, as you said, not only him, but the presence he brought, just the excitement, and he always put defenders on edge.
He's full of energy.
Exactly, you never quite knew what was coming, and he could go left, he could go right, he could shoot from distance, he could sort of go past the man. You never quite knew what was coming, and for that it was just a brilliant spectacle, a brilliant player to watch. So he will be a massive miss for Stockport. It's a real shame that he didn't get sort of his big farewell against Birmingham. That was tipped a bit. I think a hamstring sort of niggle kept him out, and if he is looking for that Championship move, then the club getting him will want him at full fitness. So I understand that, of course, but it is a bit of a shame that he didn't get a proper goodbye. In terms of how Stockport replace him, well, actually, since his departure was announced, they've not won a game yet. In fairness, they got a solid draw.
They've only played one.
No, twice. Yeah, they've got a solid draw against Birmingham, and then they lost at Mansfield. So maybe I'm just being harsh on Stockport a little bit.
It's new year, new me, but Seb Jones has got more like unhappy rather than good. Everyone usually gets more positive in the new year, and Seb Jones is they've not won in 2 games. I think you've been a little bit harsh, but no, I understand the point you're trying to make, and
but they will. Yeah,
Kyle Wootton's a good striker. I just bring you onto that part of it.
Yeah.
But he ain't a Louis Barry. He scored 6 goals, and perhaps he is part of the solution. I don't think it's we get rid of Louis Barry, replace him with a straight swap, because I don't think there's that calibre of player available to Stockport County. So I think it could be a bit of a mixture of Wootton stepping up his game, playing more, scoring more, you hope, and then bringing someone in alongside him is probably how I see it. But I think he's an important part of the puzzle in that respect. Though he got an assist in this game to Will Collar.
Yeah, and I think Louis Barry and Wootton worked well, sort of like a big and small duo, if you like. One was sort of feeding off the other, and vice versa. But I don't think Wootton really has the play to feed off now. Now Louis Barry's gone, so obviously you want to replace Barry, but you don't want to bring in a direct copy replacement. You want to bring a player that is their own, but can perhaps fill a little bit of a gap. I don't think Stockport are going to fully replace what Louis Barry had, but they'll do what they can, really.
Yeah, and on the game, we'll be remiss not to talk about that and about Mansfield in particular. I know Callum has a vendetta against Mansfield, but over here on the review podcast, we'll give them their dues with its 4 wins out of 5 after that run of 6 without, which we talked about at the time, being that they just need to get a win from anywhere, and that could kick them onto a good run, and that's exactly what's happened. They've got one, and it's sprung them into life, and they've really turned a corner. Nigel Clough leading a really good run of form around Christmas and New Year. They're up to 9th, 1 point off Stockport, 4 off the playoffs, and they've got games in hand, 1 or 2 on those teams around them. It's looking rosy and really positive at the minute for Mansfield.
For sure, it is. Yeah. Boateng with both assists. Gregory scoring again. We know that he went on a bit of a good run prior to Mansfield bad form. That sort of coincided with each other. But Gregory opened the scoring, and then they were pegged back. But then Will Evans, maintained Mansfield's lead just 6 minutes before half time. So that's a great time to score going into the break, and then no goals in the second half. But yeah, as I mentioned, two assists from Boateng. Mansfield are on a great run of form, and it's all looking rosy really for Nigel Clough's men. I've always been a good admirer really of Nigel Clough.
He's done a great job with Mansfield.
Exactly that, yeah. And we flash back to even further his time at Burton. He got them up to the Championship at one stage, and who'd have thought that? But Mansfield, he come up this season. I think we've got to sort of just take a step back a minute, and actually Mansfield and Stockport as well. Well, I guess include Wrexham, but more Mansfield, I guess, more of the journey that they've been on. And the fact that they don't have the money that perhaps Wrexham do.
A lot of football is sort of geared and driven by who has the most money, if you like. And obviously, it's not the be all and end all, but it's really, really important. And of those teams that have come up, Stockport have obviously had the funds, but they've built their way up from non-league to get there. And Wrexham, obviously, we don't need to talk about the fact that they've got money. Mansfield are the odd one out of that trio in that they, and Crawley obviously going through the playoffs, but Mansfield haven't got heaps of cash. They've had to sparingly use what they have. It was a really good performance for them to get up in the first place automatically, and never mind how they're performing this season. I mean, to be in the mix of in and around the playoffs at the halfway stage of the season is unbelievable, and it's a fantastic achievement. I thought they'd be in the mix down the bottom of the league. I think we all said that in the pre-season, the preview, the look ahead to the season. So it's been a shock to all of us, and they're doing really well. And Nigel Clough's done a tremendous job. Losing Kilo Dunn, obviously, to your team, Barnsley, that we'll talk about in the second half. They've not missed a beat, and they're still in and around the playoffs, even now, halfway through the season.
Yeah, massive credit to Nigel Clough, massive credit to the whole team around Mansfield, really. They're just sort of on a bit of a roll, really, and it's good to see. It's good to see, as I said, Nigel Clough always been a fan, so to see him doing well, and I guess Stockport playing Mansfield. This game a few years ago would have been sort of a League Two clash. Well, it was the League Two clash last season, yeah. And then Stockport was in the National League a few years ago as well. So to see this as sort of a higher end League One game, it's sort of credit to both clubs really.
Yeah, definitely.
To the journey that they've respectively taken, I think it's massive and great to see.
Yeah, it's all credit to the recruitment as well. I mean, Lee Gregory, obviously on the score sheet here, how well he's doing. And we're going to talk about teams who haven't perhaps recruited very well, and they're seeing the side effects of that in the second half of the podcast. But we'll take a quick break. I'll take on some fluids, and we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to the League One Lowdown, the review episode, the first of 2025. I'm Jamie Johnson, here on the Deck Podcast Network alongside Seb Jones, and we'll jump straight back in. The positives of Mansfield's recruitment, and, well, I'll let you fill in the blank as we talk about Wrexham versus Peterborough United. Wrexham will do first before, I guess, the main talking point being that Peterborough are slowly creeping their way towards a relegation fight down the bottom of League One. Which was a shock to all of us. We laughed really out of surprise rather than anything else. Because, I mean, at the start of the season, if you told us Peterborough would be this far down, fair play if you predicted it, because I don't think many did. Wrexham, though, we'll start with them. It's only one loss in 10 League One games, that against Barnsley, and 11 all competitions. They've lost just the one across, and they're doing really well. Up in third, level on points with the automatic spots, even though they've played a game more. And another positive result for them here. They do so well at home, and a 1-0 win against Peterborough, even given how much Peterborough are struggling, is still a good result.
Yeah, for sure, and I think the biggest takeaway is, I guess, the late goal, 87 minute, was when the goal from Stephen Fletcher came, and that sort of sealed the 3 points for the home side. It's worth noting that Stephen Fletcher has actually scored in the 87th minute or later in 3 of Wrexham's last 4 games. So we talk about players stepping up. We talk about players having quality and strikers proving their worth. That's exactly what Stephen Fletcher has done in the past few games for Wrexham, and some of which have made a big difference. This one has given Wrexham all 3 points. So yeah, you want your strikers to score, and Fletcher is an exact example of that. I mentioned that the late show, Alex Ferguson was watching, and he'd be very impressed with the Fletcher time, as I'm going to recall it.
Oh,
So
look, that is superb from Seb
I'm on
Jones.
it. I'm on it. So yeah, late show for Wrexham, but they've been on a great run of form, Wrexham, really, bearing that result at Barnsley, which I'm not complaining about at all. Bearing that result at Barnsley, it's been pretty smooth going, really, for Wrexham. They're up in a good league position in third, joint points with Wycombe in second, only 2 points actually off the top, albeit they have played a couple of games extra. But it is looking pretty solid for Phil Parkinson's side. And yeah, I'm sure they'll be very happy with where they are at the minute.
And top of the table at home, they're unbeaten at home still, and that racecourse ground, that how well they're doing there is so important. They say make your home ground a fortress. Well, they've done that and then some, Wrexham, haven't they?
For sure,
the rewards of that. Peterborough, they're the exact opposite of everything we've just said positively about Wrexham. They're in an absolute mess. They're in 19th, 25 points, and that is just 5 clear of relegation. Only 1 point from the last 15 available to them. What's gone wrong, Seb? If that's not too broad a question to ask you. We're going to talk about January in the recruitment side in just a second for Peterborough, but how do they get out of this sort of rut? Is it a new manager, perhaps, as much as you don't want to say it? Is it a focusing on January? Is it a, well, scrap the season, stay up, and we'll try again next year? Just where do you see them at the minute, Peterborough?
Sorry, that was a really bad time yawn then.
That was just shocking. I should have.
It's still early. It's still early.
It is very early. We're recording this on a Monday morning with the snow outside my window. It is early doors into the.
It's early doors, but I'm back and I'm in the zone. I don't know. I think a lot has gone wrong at Peterborough this season. We can talk about their transfers in the summer, but a lot of time has passed since then, and we spoke about that at the time. We spoke about bringing in replacements, but we've seen so often Peterborough be able to bring in suitable replacements, for players that have departed for a good fee for the club. But just this season, it hasn't seemed to work. I'm not saying that that's the only excuse. I'm not saying everything else apart from that is perfect. No, that's not the case at all. Things aren't just going right for them at all in any department, really.
Things aren't clicking, are they? I mean, we talk a lot about the summer. I feel like every time we talk about Peterborough, we mention the fact that they just lost too many of those star players in the summer. And then to add to that, the one that was left was Poku, and he's out injured. And he's been the star of the show. I mean, 10 goals for him, 5 assists, and he's out injured. So you're missing all the ingredients of that successful team last year, plus Poku being out injured. It's a recipe for disaster. But even still, you expect Peterborough to be doing better, and those excuses don't fully cover what is going wrong, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure. I agree, really. There's just a bit of a cesspit at the club, really. I think, the manager Ferguson's just been banned for swearing at the officials in their defeat to Barnsley, and fined for that as well. It's just not a very nice atmosphere around the ground, really, around the club. They've already sort of opened the January business. They've signed Carl Johnston from Fleetwood, the right back, for a sizable 6-figure fee. But 22 years age, 110 appearances for Fleetwood since signing in 2018. But whether signing right back is the right course of action for Peterborough, I'm really not sure.
He was straight in as well. I mean, he played for Fleetwood on New Year's Day against Doncaster, the game I was at, and I can't say I noticed him. You don't really notice right backs, do you? He didn't do a whole lot. Didn't do anything wrong, but didn't do anything right either.
Yeah.
The first goal did come down his side, so maybe that was his fault. But he played a full 90 minutes in just 3 days later for Peterborough, so he's thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah, well, clearly not made that much of a difference. And if we're being harsh and sort of results-wise, a suggestion that it's just not a nice feeling, really. You know, in the league table, that they're all the way down in 19th, 5 points off the relegation place. So I don't know, there is a bit of a gap. You know, we spoke about that in terms of the Bristol Rovers earlier on. I know there's a gap, but for a club like Peterborough, it's unacceptable, really, to be stooping that low, to be in amongst the teams that they are amongst. It's poor. It's really poor. And something has got to change, whether that is a new manager, whether they are hesitant to get rid of him because of the history that they've had with him before, whether, you know, the past that he's brought so much success in his various stints at the club before. I'm not really sure. I can't quite really put my finger on it as such. But something has got to change for sure at Peterborough United.
Yeah, definitely that. I mean, you think sometimes with Peterborough it could be sell to buy and that sort of thing. So we'll see how January goes, and I'm sure there'll be one of the teams we talk about a lot more, and they'll be one of the more active perhaps, or one of the more talked about through this month. You get all sort of links, you imagine, don't you, with people like, oh, this team is going to sign this player. Peterborough, I think, will be a focus of that, you imagine. But we'll move on. 2 games to go, and it is the games involving the teams, the one I cover and the one you support. And we'll start with the one for you, Seb. I can sit back and rest my voice for a couple of minutes as I let you talk about Barnsley 3, Crawley Town 0.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that final scoreline doesn't do us justice, really. I probably should have been about 5 or 6. Crawley were just absolutely there for the taking. I've watched a lot of football this season, and I don't think I've seen a side as bad as Crawley, honestly.
Really?
They were just...
So they're, I mean, I know they're a little bit inconsistent. I mean, they've conceded 10 in their last 3, which is obviously tells you all you need to know. Were they? Is that defensively they were troubling? Were they nothing going forward? What sort of dig down a little bit more detail? What was the issues?
Yeah, just defensively, really. In fact, they had a couple of good attacking options going forward. I'll just get the name. It was the number 14 for Crawley that proved a bit of a threat for them. But other than that, I didn't really have anyone at all. Sorry, it was number 12, Panucci Kamara, that was pretty impressive for this side. Other than that, I didn't really offer anything up top. They had sort of these inverted wingers, and they just kept sort of crossing it to the far post, but they were just crossing it to this 5'2" like wing back that had just sort of sprinted forward against our 6 foot centre halves, and it was just not working out at all for them. And at the back, they were just all over the place. You know, nothing was really happening for them at all. Every time Barnsley came forward, it looked like scoring. In fact, it's only from a couple of bad misses. Max Waters had a few chances to add to his tally. Yes, he got 1, but he could have had some more. Keeler Dunn had a couple of shots from distance as well. Again, yes, he scored 1, but could have had more, really. As I said, it could have been 5 or 6, really. And in fairness, Crawley did bang on the door at the end of the game. You know, there were 3 or 4 times Ben Killip had to stand tall and defend his goal line, but that's only because of some Barnsley, I think, just got a bit complacent. Even I could say Neil Collins then. Even Darryl Clark said that he wasn't happy with the last 20-25 minutes.
Yeah. Well, he's one of those managers that, and they can win 5-1, and the 1 will be he's very particular, I guess you'd say. He's very determined. I think that what makes him
for sure
one of those managers you feel like you'd run through a brick wall for.
Yeah.
Is a Darryl Clark. You mentioned 2 of the goal scorers, Waters and Keeler Dunn, Russell as well with the other one. It's 4 wins in a row for Barnsley after a 4-0 defeat to Leyton Orient, after getting there. A bit of balance with yourself and Sam. And that home form, you need it to pick up though, don't you? That is the only negative, and it's a real incentive of this game that you've got that victory at home. You've played really well, as you mentioned there, Seb, and you'd be hoping you can string a run together at Oakwell. You're 16th in the the home table of home games so far this season, and that is the bit that needs picking up because you're fifth in the table, but not winning at home. It's a bit of a weird mixture, but that is the only downside in terms of the overall, but a really positive result and one that points in the right direction in that regard.
For sure, I'm going to be slightly selfish here and say that Barnsley are unbeaten in 2025. So that's two. But in fairness, I think, as you said, sort of the biggest takeaway is that it's 2 wins from home in 2025. And given 2024 was such a poor year in terms of results at Oakwell, I think it's a solid start. And that's not mean to say that we're going to do what we did in 2019 and got the full year unbeaten at Oakwell, but certainly it makes for a good year, really. You're getting off to a good start, and the performances before that away from home around the Christmas period, wins away at Peterborough, away at Bolton as well. Picking up good wins over that time against some tricky sides, and the Wrexham win on New Year's Day was massive as well. So it's all looking rosy. As you said, 4 wins on the bounce, and good sort of goal scoring habits, which is always good to see. Things are just looking quite rosy for now. Looking good. We've a bit like Peterborough, we've just brought in a new wing back ourselves, but I think he's more of sort of a backup option, just to add a bit more squad depth because the Christmas obviously schedule was so intense. We have past few games we have seen a couple of changes, which I think is good. It's always good to rotate the squad and to keep everyone happy, to keep people minutes, and Darryl Clark has managed that superbly.
Yeah, it's always important, is squad depth, and when you're pushing up the right end of the table, that's exactly what you need, and Barnsley have that in some areas, perhaps more coming in January in terms of those additions you mentioned, Seb. Important stuff there, but the exact opposite, everything you said looking rosy, they're unbeaten in 2025, while Lincoln City are not. They drew 0-0 with Stevenage. It finally ended their run, 3 defeats in a row, but a draw keeps them on a really poor run. They haven't 1 win in 12 league games, which is just dismal. And this is the stat that was doing the rounds, and perhaps the most unbelievable one. They've 378 minutes of football since they last scored a goal, Lincoln City, and tells you all you need to know in terms of how much they're struggling. Jovan McCarmer has become a little bit of a and the word evades me, but sort of he's been the one picked out as the issue, if you can sort of
that scapegoat.
Yeah, there you are. Thank you. That's what Jovan McCarmer. He missed an absolute sitter in this game, 2 yards out, and he somehow hit the back of the stand. It was. See if you can find it. It's one of those what happens next, and you can't believe it's gone over the bar. It's harder to miss, but in the grand scheme of things, he isn't the problem. He isn't the problem. He isn't the reason Lincoln City aren't scoring goals. It's not just the fact that he misses chances like that, because nobody's putting those chances away. And I think that is worth a mention, because Jovan McCarmer every time Lincoln lose, it's Jovan McCarmer's fault, and I don't think that's entirely truthful. He's perhaps just not ready for League One football. And there's a good footballer in him, but he perhaps needs a bit of time building up a loan out, perhaps somewhere. That's not going to come in this window. You don't think? Lincoln City, they've said they want a loan. They're going to try and get one. Michael Scabala seemed to be suggesting that if there's one available, they'll take it. It seems like it's going to be a loan for a striker in January. Speaking to BBC Radio Lincolnshire after the game against Stevenage. So it's keeping an eye on that, who that striker could be. No one really knows. Tyler Walker's out injured yet again. It looks like that is the end of the road for him. He'll be back in 10 weeks' time, which takes him up to towards the end of the season, which you presume with his contract out at the end of the term, that just cut your losses, really. With that, and Rob Street's been sent out on loan to Doncaster. Those attacking options, apart from a Bailey Cadamartri, who for me has been the star of the show up top for Lincoln. Ben House hasn't been firing. Freddie Draper, McCarmer haven't been either. That being the issue, they can create not as well as they used to last season, or even in the early parts of this season. They're struggling to create chances, but when they do, they're not putting in the back of the net. And the obvious missing ingredient in that is a striker. They have plenty of attacking midfielders, that they could be using. The positive being that it's a draw and it's a start.
Yeah.
Because they were on an unbelievable one. I was quite happy to be on at Gainsborough Trinity on Saturday in their FA Trophy game against York City. It's one of the reasons my voice is such a mess, because I was on commentary for that game because my one of my colleagues at the Link, one of the publication everyone in Lincoln, was at the Lincoln game, and I sent him a picture of us celebrating. He sent me a picture of him head on laptop. And that sort of summed up the difference between the two games we were at, and sort of sums up Lincoln's football at the minute. I'm not quite sure where the solution comes, because they are playing some really turgid football at times, and it's just direct. They moan a lot about Steve Evans and playing direct football, but at least his direct football works. Is all I'd say on that. But Stevenage, go on, I'll let you go.
Yeah. Well, as for Stevenage, they've sort of extended their unbeaten run. They've only lost once since the start of December. So actually, all things considered, I think it's quite a good.
It's 4 clean sheets out of 5 as well.
Yeah, quite a good run of form. I guess the main aim is to keep goals out, and that's what they are doing under Alex Ravel. So yeah, it's been, yes, results have not always been there, and the past two have finished 0-0. But things are looking good. They lost to Wycombe on Boxing Day, but Wycombe are a good side, and that they're up the high end of the league table at the minute. But yeah, a couple of solid points, and if you can't win a draw, I've just absolutely butchered that. If you can't win a game, nick a draw, and that's exactly what they've done. That's exactly what they've done in the past few weeks. You can get Ryan
to edit that out for you, Seb.
Well, So, and that's what they've done. Yes, it's always not pretty, and it's probably not the best football to watch, but actually, it's getting the results. And for a team like Stevenage to be sat 13th in the league table, I think is about right.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I mean, they're a mid-table side, and perhaps that's what Lincoln are as well. I mean, they were both pushing towards the playoffs. Lincoln more long-term. They got right onto the last day. They could have got in the playoffs. Stevenage, the wheels fell off of that a few games before the end, and Stephen Evans obviously jumped ship to Rotherham just before the end of the season. But they're two teams that were pushing in the right direction last season. I think it shows the strength of the league, doesn't it? That the teams coming down, the teams coming up, the league has got better, and those teams just outside the playoffs are now mid-table teams, and they've moved a few spots down. Obviously, when you're a supporter of one of the two teams, Lincoln, obviously, I'm more aware of sort of what the supporters are saying and the general consensus. They're not happy with being sat mid-table, but perhaps that is just where the club is financially and player quality-wise. At the moment, we'll look ahead to the Tuesday night game in just a second, but the other games from Saturday were Burton Albion losing 1-0 at home to Northampton Town. The only talking point from that, I'm hoping you've seen it, Seb. If you haven't, I might force you to get it up and watch it now for a live reaction, because Gary Bowyer, the ball came to him as he was on the touchline, obviously the Burton manager, and he's gone to absolutely hoof it to the other side of the pitch. I don't know why. And he's slipped over and tried to style it out. He's just got straight back up and shouted some instruction to try and pretend, hope no one's noticed as the camera is on him, as he took one hell of a tumble. And if no one has seen it, do find that video on social media, because it is absolutely hilarious. Gary Bowyer just taking a massive, massive tumble, trying to, as I say, hoof the ball to waste a few seconds. I'm hoping he got booked. I don't know if he did, for trying to waste a bit of time there. But a couple of goalless draws. Charlton Athletic against Reading and Huddersfield Town against Rotherham United. Leyton Orient, they're 10 unbeaten, a 1-0 win for them against Shrewsbury Town. Birmingham City, thanks to an Alfie May brace and Will Williamson goal, back to the top of the table, a 3-0 win on the road at Wigan Athletic for them. And finally, it's a 93rd minute winner, another late show with Kyle Joseph, this time against 10 men Wycombe Wanderers, who we're going to talk about in just a second. Blackpool there drawing 1-1 against the promotion chasers. Well, Wycombe, they're in action on Tuesday night against Huddersfield, one of the rearranged games. It's the only game of midweek. And it's one of those that obviously will be on Sky Plus, and it's one of those that I think, well, I'm going to watch that because it looks a really interesting and a really should be exciting game of football, Seb.
Yeah, on the face of it, for sure, two teams that are in a good run of form. Up in the high end of the league table rankings, as such. Huddersfield in fourth, Wycombe in second. So, yeah, it's set for a good clash, really. Not too many points between them as well, 7 points between them. So, yeah, it should be an exciting one. Both of the teams are on a good run of form, albeit Huddersfield drew at the weekend. But, yeah, teams have got both teams have got good attacking talent, and there'll definitely be goals in this one for sure.
Well, they've not lost since the 1st of October in the league, Huddersfield, and that just shows you how well they're doing. Obviously, I think we talked earlier on in the season that they were sort of hit a struggling patch, but they're well and truly out of that. They're up to fourth. There is that gap, that buffer between themselves and the front three, but a couple of games in hand on Wrexham and 7 points off. It could be. This is a really important game for them, particularly. Obviously, we're at halfway stage of the season. In the grand scheme of things, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and all of that sort of analogy you can throw at it. But closing the gap, a Huddersfield win had put them onto 47 points, and it puts them slightly closer, doesn't it, to the automatics? And even at this stage of the season, that's always an important thing to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The points difference is not massive, but actually you can quite easily pick up on it. A couple of good fixtures on the bounce. You hope that other sides slip up as well, then you're in the position that you want to be. So the gap might seem pretty big and unachievable at the minute, but it only takes a couple of good results to sort of swing together and absolutely soon close down. So all is not. Could be on for an exciting finish for Huddersfield, I think.
I'm going to ask you for a prediction in a minute, so I'll let you think of that as I just sort of talk about Wycombe. Obviously, they drew 1-1, as I mentioned a minute ago, against Blackpool. Before that, they needed a 94th minute penalty to beat Exeter, and the game ahead of that was a loss at Charlton. They've hit a little bit of it's not a dreadful run of form. They picked up 4 points from their last 3 games, but they've hit a little bit of a stumbling block around Christmas with those games coming thick and fast, as we always mention. So it'd be interesting to see. They'll obviously be wanting to rebound before they host Portsmouth in the FA Cup on Friday night. So you've had a minute to think, Seb. A score prediction from yourself, sir.
I'm going to go 2 apiece. It's been entertaining. 2-2 draw. I can't see side nicking it. I can just see goals and entertainment.
No, I think that's. I should have gone first because that's what I was going to say. So I'll go different, and I'll go for Wycombe. I think out of the 2 teams, I fancy Wycombe at home. Obviously, I'll go 2-1. I think it will be a really entertaining game, this one. Hopefully, anyway, that's not the podcaster's curse, if you like.
Well, fingers crossed.
Built it up to be a disappointing one, but hopefully not on that front. Sam and Callum will talk about it, obviously, on their preview podcast later on in the week as they look ahead to the weekend, and we will be back same time, same place, this time next week on the Deck Podcast Network for our review episode. It'd be a bit of a mixed one with the FA Cup as well taking place next weekend. So thank you for watching, for listening. As Sam mentioned at the start, please do subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you very much if you have. And whatever podcast network you're on, give us a review, a like, whatever the function is on your platform. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again this time next week.